everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the A&A podcast. I'm so excited, and I hope you are because we're starting a podcast that's going to help you answer your voiceover podcast and spoken word questions. And this is just the beginning of something incredible. We're going to be having people from across the continent talk to us about the questions we might have, proffering solutions. My name is Tolulope Kolade, but you may know me as T Code. It's my pleasure to be the host of the first edition of this podcast. Now, this episode is supposed to be one that we would explore everything that has to do with observance days in Africa, particularly when it comes to the audio creative niche. If you're aware, APVA, that's the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists, who are the organizers of this particular podcast, which includes myself because I'm a member of APVA. We have three major audio creative niche that we look after, which is the spoken words, the voiceover artist, and the podcasters. And so we're looking at these three fields, and we want to look at how observance days play a crucial role in the growth and the development of our crafts as podcasters, voiceover artists, and spoken word artists. I am a podcaster. I'm a voiceover artist. I'm not a spoken word artist, though, but I have a lot of people who are into this in the community. And it's my pleasure to have two of the very prominent Africans who are into these fields speak to us today. Right. So allow me to properly introduce me, myself, and then I introduce them, and then we get into the topic of our conversation today. So again, I am T Code. I'm a voiceover artist from Nigeria. I'm a podcaster also from Nigeria. I am the host of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, The African Perspective, and I am the creative partner at APVA. All right, I think that's short and simple. All right, so let me then introduce my guest. And like they say, ladies first. I have with me a beautiful lady. Gathoni is a podcast expert all the way from Kenya with 5 years plus of experience in the podcasting field. She's the community manager at Afripods, a digital content strategist and award-nominated podcaster and a podcast trainer and coach. I mean, come on, that's a whole lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Gathoni Ngumba. I hope I got that correctly,
Hey,
Gathoni.
what a good introduction. I should be on every episode now.
I would love to have you on every episode. Come on, you have a lot of experience in this, and I can't wait for us to talk again on other episodes. So, thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you for
Gathoni.
having me.
All right. And now to another important personality. Um, Previously, we started calling him the grandfather or the elder in our industry. Is a legend, actually. Is one of the, legendary voice of artists that we've got in Africa. The credits and awards, they speak for him. It doesn't have to say anything, but having a three-time Sovas Voice Arts Award to his name, and that's a big deal. He's also a two-time APVA award winner, and I mean, he's done so much in the field of voiceover, starting from Zambia to South Africa to the rest of the world. You hear his voice for over 2 decades on the continent and beyond. I'm talking about no other person than, I like to put Elder in front of his name, Elder Chilu Lemba.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Chilu.
How's it going? Tico, this is interesting because first I was just, Chilu, then I became elder, now I'm grandfather. So next year I'll be great grandfather. I can see
Great,
this coming.
great
Good to be in your
grandfather.
company, and Gathoni, also good to be in your company.
Amazing. Thank you for joining. Okay, so the topic we're looking at today is what are observance days for audio creatives, their importance and relevance. If you're an audio creatives in these three particular niches that I, referenced earlier, you should know that at least two of them have observance days for Africans, while the other one has an observance day for like globally, like the entire world. So What are these days? We've got Africa Podcast Day, in case you don't know, and that happens on the 12th of February every year. And also we have the Africa Voiceover Day, which started last year, 2024, and that happens on the 5th of May every year. And finally, we have the World Poetry Day, which happens on the 21st of March. Now, why do we need these days? These are the things that myself and the guests will be talking about today, or probably they will be telling me because I need to learn from them the importance of these days. Right. Okay. So let me start from the beautiful lady smiling to me, Gathoni. First of all, before we get into the topic, Gathoni, tell me
Mhm.
what podcasting means to you. Like, how have you been? What drove you into podcasting, and what has it done to your life significantly since you discovered it?
Okay, so I accidentally stumbled into working in podcasting. So I knew about podcasts, I listened to podcasts. But in 2019, I met one of the founders of Afripods, and they needed someone to do social media. And at the time, I was running my own company and I was running my own social media. And so I was able to come in and come on board as the social media manager. And I've just kind of grown in the space as it's gone. And I think the impact it has had for me now in my sixth year, which feels so long, but in my sixth year, is that I feel like it's such a beautiful opportunity for Africans to tell their stories. The thing I love about it is one, it has no rules yet. So it's not like traditional media where it has this is how you should say things, this is how you have, these are the stories that matter, these are not the stories that matter. A lot of people who have been ignored by traditional media and those things can now take up podcasting and amplify their voices or tell their stories in that sense. I think it's very important in that sense. I think it's also been very exciting to watch how it's changed
Mm,
because we started audio only now. Video is a big deal. The other day, I met someone who's a Gen Z podcaster who's like, she hosts her podcast on TikTok. And I was just like, I had never thought of TikTok as a podcast hosting platform, but it's being in a space or an industry that's not only new, but changes so fast. So there's never a boring day, but then you're in control of everything. And it feels really nice to be one of the people at the beginning of it who are able to figure out the narrative, and it's fun. For me, it's really fun to be seeing the potential it has for African stories because I feel like I always say our stories have been told to us, and now we're able to tell our stories back to the world on our own terms and with such low barrier to entry. It's, I mean, all I need is a phone. I love podcasting.
mhm.
I could go on forever, but yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, we all do. We all love podcasts, and it's no surprise that you're so neck deep into podcasting that now you're the community manager for Afriport. So, quickly, if you could define observance days, especially for the audio creatives in this context, how would you define it?
I would define it as, well, observance days are usually a day that is set aside for us to commemorate something. And I think the importance for it, especially now, is being able to celebrate African podcasting. We have International Podcast Day. It's existed for a really long time. It's celebrated on the 30th of September. But then in 2020, Melissa and Josephine, who are the creators and founders of Africa Podfest, decided, actually, I think we need a day to celebrate African podcasting. And so 12th February is what we're doing now. And there's something important in being able to celebrate our own people. We see it a lot with the APBA Awards as well, where it's great to have won an award outside of the continent. And I'm sure, Chilu, you'll be able to speak on this yourself. Getting an award from outside the continent is great, but when your peers recognize you and agree that you are at the same level, or they're able to celebrate you, there's something different about it. And I think as Africans, not to try and politicize it, but for a long time, we've not been allowed into the rooms. And I love that we are creating our own rooms to celebrate ourselves. It's this thing for not having to wait for permission to celebrate. If I want to celebrate, like, it's going to be something that continues to be celebrated, and it might be a lot bigger than just the foundation that you started. So it's exciting in that
Wow.
sense.
Wow, I know it's really, really exciting. And shout out to every African that take these bold steps to, make these days happen. Melissa and Josephine, they are like, matrons in this case, in this context. Well, let's talk about creating an observance day, which I know Chilu has a lot of experience, okay, some experience in this regard. And I say so because last year we teamed up when I say we, APVA and some other voiceover related or voiceover institutions in Africa, some in Nigeria, in Kenya, and also we had Chilu from South Africa. Chilu, when the idea came that we should start the Africa Voiceover Day, what were your initial thoughts, and why did you decide to give your entire support to this initiative?
When I first heard of it, it was from Leslie Kasumba, who's a mutual friend. Lee's an incredible person that I've known for many years. So she told me about the conversation that had already started regarding the Africa Voiceover Day. And so I got in late on the action, but I totally agree with everything that was being said and pushed in terms of the agenda. Because if you look at my journey, I've been doing voiceover, for instance, for 3 decades, grandfather, as you said. But even with that, I also realized that when I started out as a voice artist, I had no clue what the field was. And so days like Africa Voiceover Day are the days that shine the spotlight to the on the industry, and people who have no idea that this can be something that they can take on as a career, something that can earn them a livelihood, put their kids through school, something that's a serious business. Those guys get to have the opportunity to have a peek into the industry because of the initiatives that pop off from having something like Africa Voiceover Day. I mean, like, the days or months that are commemorated or observing different themes. So, like December in South Africa, it's 16 days of, commemorating, observing violence. I have to phrase this right. Violence against women and children. So that
Yeah.
spotlight is shone on that topic for 16 whole days, and because of that, the eyes of the nation are on the topic. And so similarly, when we speak of something like Africa Voiceover Day or the Podcasting Day, that's something huge where everyone can kind of tune their satellites and get as much information about these fields, which ordinarily don't have the spotlight shining on them.
I see that. And speaking of spotlighting this audio creatives in Africa, which is an opportunity, right? One of the things that I observed about last year's Africa Voiceover Day is how we were able to talk about our diversity. Is that something you'd like to, talk about that for a bit?
Yeah.
It's our day, right? And how does the day play an impact in putting that to the world to see?
And for me, and this is me speaking personally, what I've realized, even being in the WhatsApp group with the various people that speak to this, we have people who, on their own individually, are making an impact in their different communities, whether it be in Nigeria, whether it be in Kenya, whether it be in Egypt. People are making an impact. And the thing is, if you are a person such as, let's say, Sean or King E, who individually are running different conferences or different initiatives that empower people. Something like Africa Voiceover Day gets that kind of brain power, that kind of resilience in people's minds, and puts them in the same WhatsApp group with the same objective. And so I find when you speak about diversity, I'm coming at it from the angle of I'm in a position now where if I switch on my phone, I'm in a place where there's discourse happening between people who, some of them who are my heroes from Namibia, Botswana, and all that, and we're all kind of sailing and paddling this boat into one direction, which is I think unique and fulfilling. And each of us as well represents huge communities. So you might say, if you put 10, 11 people in a room or 10, 11 people in a WhatsApp group, that's 10, 11 people. But each of those people represent a few thousand people. So the kind of momentum that you have from minds talking about this and thinking of ways in which they can push this day forward and observe the craft that we've come to love, I think is pretty deep.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Chilu. I agree with you that it helps us to spotlight our diversity, and more amazingly, it helps us to also unify. And that way, the
Yes.
world understands better about Africa, what makes us unique. Let me go to Gathoni now. Gathoni, you work with Afripods, so I'm sure that from an institution's perspective, there are activities or things that must have been done in time past to sort of like commemorate this day. I'd like you to speak to other people or other institutions as well who are, in this space and how they can leverage on observance days. I'm sure there are different observance days as well, not just the voiceover podcast, but there are different observance days, and we don't have to limit ourselves to the ones the top three that we just mentioned that are very, very peculiar to us. So how do individuals, no, let's start with the institutions now. How do institutions leverage on observance days? And then you can talk about individuals after that.
Okay, so I think for institutions, it fully and absolutely depends on who it is that you're creating the spaces for and what it is they need. I think the importance, again, like you both mentioned, of observance days is not what the institution thinks is important, it's what the people it's representing think is important or want to celebrate, or what it is that matters to them. So for Afripods, I think we realized and that we've heard about, like you mentioned, I do community management, and one of the things I have had a lot of podcasters in Africa say is they don't have information about podcasting that is relative to their experience on the continent. And so, what we've done for the past 2 years is get panels with people who are experienced already in the spaces, talking about like people who have networks like Semabox and GCR and Glitch, talking to people who have platforms like Jamit on the continent, and talking to them and understanding what it is from their perspective that they're looking at. People like Trio Media in Kenya as well. We've had conversations with such people, and because there's no access necessarily for the podcasters that we represent as an institution to get to these people, it's bringing the information from these people down to them and making it accessible, because we've had that's something the people we represent want, right? Being able to have them talk to people like Kim Fox, who's doing like Podfest Cairo, Melissa, one of the founders of Africa Podcast Day, allowing them to see and observe and see, like, listen to what it is there, I guess, what drives them, and it gives them a feeling of coming together. We used to do like Afripods meets before, not just for observance days, but there's something about when you come together, it's like, oh, I didn't know, let's say in my country I had 20, I only know about 3 podcasters, now I know 20 more. And so figuring out what the people you represent need and doing it for them. So I can't necessarily speak to every other institution on the observance days, but I think figure out what your people need, figure out what they want. I know we've also done in-person events because, again, networking is a big thing. I feel like podcasting as a medium is very isolating. I sit in my house, I have my mic, I might have a guest if I do, if I don't, we might even be on Zoom. So it's still, I'm alone in my house doing my thing. But creating spaces in actual physical locations, we've had the absolute honor of having Baraza Media Lab as our partner for a lot of these, where we've been able to go to their space and have podcasters come in and even then have conversations, let's say, about media. So people from like BBC, people from Nation Africa, Adele, who's a really big podcaster in Kenya, coming and having a conversation about what the like direction and combination of like traditional media and podcasting is, and just being able to have such conversations, and then having podcasters be able to talk to each other. Collaboration becomes a thing that happens because, again, for us, that's an important thing for the people who we represent. So I think for an institution, whatever day it is you're commemorating, observing, figure out what the people you represent need and then play into that and work towards that. For individuals, I would say celebrate the day how you see fit. I'm a podcaster. How I would celebrate Africa Podcast is not necessarily how T-Code would or Chilu, because you're both podcasters as well. I think use it as a day because I think it's something we've all mentioned that it becomes a day where people now look to African podcasting. Like, for example, on 12th February, a lot of the world will be watching Africa on the day because they know there's something happening. So it's the day to find out who are the editors, who are the people who are doing the podcasting. Maybe it's the day for you to put yourself out there. Maybe you've been trying to get like someone who does a business podcast and you've been trying to get someone across a different continent to come on your podcast as a guest. That's the day to put yourself because if the people are looking to that day to figure out what's happening on the continent, that's the day to put yourself ahead or place yourself in a position that you're part of the conversation. So for individuals, I would say that's the best time to do it. We have something that's happening today. So using the hashtag, if there's a hashtag, so that you're just part of the conversation, it allows you to catch up with the people who are in your space and find people who are similar, reach out to them, and I say take advantage of it as an individual. Yeah, whatever that looks
I like
like.
that word. I like that word. You said a lot of things, and I'm taking some notes. Like, for instance, it helps us to spotlight the needs of people in the community, and for institutions, it's important for them to be able to play into that. Find a way to meet those needs and also collaborate. That's something I really like. You said, talking about how you were able to network with other institutions in Africa. That made a lot of sense, and also part of taking advantage. Very recently, I was thinking about this. The question I asked myself is, who made it a rule that on your birthdays is the day people should give you gifts? I was like, I mean, does it have to be my birthday? But then I realized that special days like that is just a day for you to appreciate people and be appreciated as well. So a lot of people are giving you gifts, and you also, give sometimes, right? You can call a party and have people come rejoice with you. So I kind of like see that to also reflect in the observance days, because a couple of observance days are the days where some institution may say, oh, we want to give out scholarships, or we want to sponsor this person, or we want to do this survey, or we want to, it's just an opportunity to give out to the community and rally together and celebrate ourselves. So it makes a lot of sense. Chilu, I want to ask you before we, as we wind down and wrap up. For individuals, Gathoni spoke on mostly the institution's perspective, but for individuals, be it a voiceover artist or podcasters now, because yeah, we want to talk about, and also spoken word artists. What are the unique things that you think they can actually do to celebrate the Observance Day in their own little way? Just to add to what Gathoni has said.
Gathoni mentioned some very interesting and very useful points. And by the way, my podcast, which I haven't been consistent with, is hosted on Afripods. So, but I think as
I love to hear it.
Yeah, no, it's one of the best things I did. I think in addition to what she said earlier on, discoverability, I think, is one of the other things that happens with hashtags. So there are times when I'll go on Instagram, I don't know if we can still follow hashtags, but I'll type in, a hashtag and discover people who are doing similar things to me. And either follow them or, observe whether there'd be people who you can partner with. For instance, if it comes to podcasting, there's a need for producers. And I remember that's one of the things when we used to try and do podcasts, to find somebody who understands what your podcast is all about, can bring value to it and take it to the next level. The majority of names that we found at some point were people based in the States. And even though they're well equipped, they might not be in tune with our context here in Africa. So I think discoverability is one of the things. Either you're just joining in the celebration, hashtagging, Africa Voiceover Day, or, the podcast day. It helps other people kind of widen the circle, because then you can see who's doing what in their fields, and either, become a follower and a fan of their work, or find points at which you can collaborate. So I think that's one of the things we can do, which is practical but also fun.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Chilu Lemba. That's important for us to take note of. All right, guys, we've come to the end, or rather, we're almost at the end of this episode of the podcast, and I've had a great conversation with Gathoni and Chilu talking about observance days. Now you know the days that you can take aside to celebrate yourself as a podcaster, as a voiceover artist, and as a spoken word artist, especially as Africans. Well, internationally, there are other days. I think Africa Podcast Day, World Podcast Day should be sometime around September, towards the end of September. But for Africans, we have it on the 12th of February. So if you're an African podcaster, set your calendar, and every year find something you can do to spotlight yourself, and you also use the hashtag, like Chilu just mentioned, for better discoverability. And if you're a voiceover artist, looking forward to the 5th of May, and it's going to be awesome. Also take advantage of that. And if you're a spoken word artist or a poet, there's still the World Poetry Day, which is March 21st. You can release a very impactful, one of your best projects on that day and see it go viral, right? It's the greatest opportunity. Anyways, as we come to the end of this episode, I just want to ask one last question from the both of you, which is, if there's one thing you wish people can take home from this, what would that be? And if you have plans for celebrating this observance days, do you mind sharing with us? That's or if you're still celebrating, you can let us know. But just your final words and giving us tip of the iceberg. Gathoni, I'll start from you.
Okay, so this year we're celebrating, what we did is wanted to represent, the theme is celebrating African podcasting. And so we have reached out to different people in different spaces on the continent. We didn't want it to be a thing that it's Afripods who are planning. We wanted it to be a reflection of what podcasting looks like, because like we've said, there's a lot of nuances that are very different in different countries. And we wanted each country to be able to represent that for themselves. So we're really excited to have a full day of scheduling. We're working with the APVA to get it done. We have podcasters who are going to be doing their things. We have a masterclass that's going to be happening. So I would say follow Afripods, follow APVA. You'll find out more about it. And then closing remarks. If there's a day that you want to celebrate yourself, create it. If there's no spoken word day for African podcast spoken word artists, create the day. I feel like the days were created. Someone just sat down and decided, okay, this is the day we'll do the thing. So sit down as a community and decide this is the day that we will celebrate the thing, and then it'll happen. So to celebrating more African things,
Amazing.
to us not asking for permission, to us taking up space.
Amazing. I was almost inspired to say, okay, why don't we start Nigerian voiceover day?
You can do it. If you
One third of us on this panel has the opportunity.
The fourth, and then you celebrate with the continent.
Yeah, the voiceover day for Africa just started last year, so we can still, enjoy that. Let's ride on the wave. Okay, thank you so much, Gathoni. Such a good feedback from you. Now let's hear from you, Chilu. Any plans and last words?
Before I talk about plans, Gathoni, is the H silent in your name? I've always wondered. On this public platform, is it Gathoni or Gathoni?
So we do the TH like so it would be Gathoni. Yeah, so it's like just like the
so like the way the Americans would say Anthony as opposed to Anthony, how they'd say it in
yes,
right,
exactly.
yeah.
So it's Gathoni. Exactly.
That's my lesson for the day.
Same here.
You guys.
Thank you.
Well, on my side, in terms of plans, I think there's a number of activities that are going to be planned on the day, and I'm just going to fall in line with what my bosses on the day, you guys, tell me to do. But I think it's an exciting period for the continent, because a lot of these initiatives have, if you think about it, emerged in the past nine, 10 years. So all these podcasting efforts, APVA, Afripods, I'm sure also falls within this decade-long emergence of things. I observe, like, with utter marvel as to how organized the industry in Kenya is, for example, and all these initiatives that are coming about. So even though we're saying Africa Voiceover Day, this will be its second year. Man, this is going to be something that, fast forward to 10 years down the line, will be an institution. I think it will be something that we'll look back at and say, like, wow, this is something that's really been impactful to people on the continent, especially those on the come up, as us grandfathers go into the sunset of our careers. So yeah, no, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be, hashtagging and, just enjoying the day.
Wow, great. I mean, and I promise, Chilu, when I have my children, I'll tell them I once hosted the grandfather of of voiceover in Africa. Oh my, it's been a beautiful period with you guys on the
Thank you.
podcast, and it's always a pleasure to have Gathoni, right?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Gathoni is the community manager at Afripods, a podcaster of over 5 years of experience, a podcast trainer and coach, and an award-nominated podcaster. And also, I had with me Chilu Lemba, who is a three-time Sovas Award-winning voice actor, and I mean, a legend in the game. Thank you guys for joining
Thank you so
on the
much.
first episode. You're welcome. And that's it for the first episode of the A&A podcast, brought to you by APVA, Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists. If you want to learn more about the podcast and everything that we do, check us out on our website at apva.africa or on our social media handles at apva_official. You can drop us a message or send us an email. We'll get back to you. It's been my pleasure hosting this. My name is Tolu Kolade, but you can call me T Code. I'm your voiceover artist from Nigeria. I'm a podcaster and a voiceover coach. All right. So that's it for this episode. And I'll see you in the next episode. Keep having a great time podcasting, doing voiceovers and spoken words, or whatever it is in the audio creative space you're doing. Keep doing it, and we'll be written for you. Have a great time, and bye for now.